In this lesson, we'll look at the process of backing up your work so it can be accessed in the future. Before we look at specifics, it's important to understand that DaVinci Resolve uses an industry-standard database that stores everything related to your projects, including bins, clips, and timelines. However, with the introduction of Resolve 18, the term Project Database has been replaced with a new term, Project Libraries. Whether you realize it or not, you've been working from a project library throughout this entire tutorial. Press Shift 1 to open the Project Manager. As you learned previously, the Project Manager is where you create and import projects. You can think of the Project Manager as a master vault for storing all your work, but it's the database that manages everything in the vault. In the upper left of the window, you'll see three project library types: Local, Network, and Cloud. Local is the default type and the one we've been working from. A local library simply means that the library is stored on your local hard drive. Local libraries are created by default the first time you open Resolve, so they're transparent to the user. The second type of library is called a network library. If you have multiple Resolve workstations in a studio or home office, you can set up a local network using the DaVinci Resolve Project Server application. Then, all the users on the network who have access can work on the same project. Setting up a collaborative workflow is beyond the scope of this tutorial, so I won't be covering it here. The third type of library is called a cloud library. Like a network library, it's used to collaborate with other Resolve users, but instead of the projects being hosted on a local network, they're hosted in the Blackmagic Cloud, where anyone in the world you give access to can collaborate on your project. This option requires a fast internet connection, and each system must have a local copy of all the media. We'll come back to this later. Since we've been working on a local project library, let's return to that tab. To view the project library, make backups, and restore them, click this button. Here we see the single local database that was created when Resolve was launched for the first time. You can create additional project libraries by clicking this button. Typically, you would do this when you wanted to keep your client projects separate from each other. In the name field, give your library a name. Just for expediency, I'll name this one Client Work. Choose a location by clicking the Browse button. I'll target my local Documents folder on my Mac, then click Create. The project library is created and an untitled project is placed into it. To get more info about the library, click this button. You can view the directory location of your library here, or you can click this button to reveal it in the Mac's Finder, or File Browser if you're on Windows. Obviously, if something were to happen to this library through a hard drive failure or user error, you would lose all your projects, and hence your work. This is why I recommend backing up your project libraries to a separate drive at regular intervals. Additionally, as your project libraries grow in size, they can get bloated and slow down over time, so it's a good idea to periodically create a new database to keep your work moving along quickly. To back up a project library, click the Backup button. Then choose a location on any connected system drive, then click Save. A window will appear asking you to confirm the operation. I'll click Backup. To restore the library, click the Restore button. Navigate to your backup, then click Open. I won't be doing that, I just wanted you to see the process. I'll return to the main panel. To load another library, just select it from the list. To remove a database from the list, right-click and choose Remove. Resolve does not actually delete databases. It only disconnects from them and removes them from this list. The database still exists in the location you set, and you can always reconnect to it, assuming you remember where you saved the database on your system. You would then just click the Restore button to locate it and reestablish the connection to the database. Now let's look at the process of creating a library in Blackmagic's cloud. Before you can create a library in the cloud, you first need to create an account at blackmagicdesign.com. Once you've logged in, the next step is to create a project server if you'll be the one hosting the library. Give your project a library name, then choose a server region from the menu. Because of the nature of working across the internet, it's best to choose a server region that's closest to the city you and your team will be working in to optimize performance and reduce any potential lag time. If you'll be hosting the library, you'll be asked to pay a recurring fee of $5 per month. You'll be able to host up to 10 cloud users, and the only one that has to pay the fee is the one hosting the library. You can cancel at any time, and you still have access to your library if you copy it locally. Personally, for the ability to collaborate with anyone around the world for $5 a month, it's a no-brainer. Back in DaVinci Resolve, log into your cloud account, and you'll see the library you just created with an untitled project ready to be shared with other members of your team. Just click the Info button, then the Share button. Anyone you share with must have a Blackmagic Cloud account already set up. The members of your team will appear in this panel. Let's return to our local library for the rest of this lesson. Now let's talk about exporting projects. Here we have the projects we've been working on throughout the tutorial. Right-click on the Salt Flats thumbnail. You can export a project, or you can export a project archive. If you export a project, you're exporting a small text file with just the instructions for reconstituting the project. The file you'll be exporting is called a DRP file, or DaVinci Resolve project file. You might recall we did this back in Lesson 8. The important thing to remember about DRP files is that they do not include the media files. So if you open a DRP file on another system, you'll need to relink the media. If, however, you want to create a self-contained project that includes both the DRP file and the media it references, you'll need to create a project archive. I'll save this archive to my Movies folder. When you create an archive, it will have a .dra extension that stands for DaVinci Resolve Archive. An archive also allows you to store the render cache and associated media, including any proxy media. Since we haven't generated any proxies, we'll leave that unchecked. Click OK to create the archive. To restore an archive, right-click in the gray area and choose Restore Project Archive. Then navigate to the DRA folder you exported. Because I already have a Salt Flats project in the database, it's asking me to give the project a unique name. I'll name this Salt Flats 2. Double-click on the project thumbnail to open it. If you open the media pool on any page, then right-click on any clip and choose Reveal in Finder, you'll be taken to the DRA folder where you can see both the media folder with all related media assets and the DRP file. Archiving is a great tool for backing up old projects and removing clutter in the project manager. But it can also be a great way to initially share a project with a collaborator. Once you've shared the project file and all the media using a DRA file, you can then email updated DRP files back and forth. DaVinci Resolve also allows you to share a single timeline or bin. Just choose the timeline you want to export, then from the File menu choose Export Timeline. Exported timelines have a DRT extension, which of course stands for DaVinci Resolve Timeline. Just like DRP files, DRT files are simply text files with the instructions for reconstituting a timeline. I'll name this timeline Alien Hunter V2 and save it to a location on my system. To open the DRT file, go back to the File menu and choose Import Timeline. Navigate to the file you exported and click Open. One thing you should be aware of is that regardless of what you name the DRT file when you saved it, when you import it, the timeline will be given the name of the original timeline it was created from with the word import appended to the name. Of course, you can always rename it if you want. You can also share a bin by right-clicking on it and choosing Export Bin. Exported bins will have a DRB extension for DaVinci Resolve Bin. Now that you have a solid understanding of how to manage databases and projects, let's turn our attention to managing the project media itself. Open the Project Manager, then open the Nelson Teaser 2 Stages project. Almost every project will need some form of media management, whether that means copying the project to another drive, consolidating the media, or even transcoding the media. The Media Manager is the tool that performs all these tasks. In most cases, you'll be using the Media Manager to create copies of just the media you used in your timeline, while excluding everything else to make the media footprint smaller. In the Media pool, select the Timeline Smart Bin, then select all the timelines. From the File menu, choose Media Management. The Media Management window appears. Because we selected all the timelines before opening the Media Manager, Timelines is the active selection at the top of the window. If we had not selected timelines but clips instead, the clips option would be selected, and if we hadn't selected anything in the media pool, the entire project would be selected. But it really doesn't matter because you can choose whatever option suits the type of operation you want to perform. We'll stick with timelines because in most cases you're interested in managing just the media used in your timelines, not the entire project or individual clips. In the timeline area, a list of all the timelines you initially selected appear. These are the timelines that are targeted for media management. Any timeline without a check mark will be excluded from the operation. The two types of media management operations appear as buttons along the top. Copy is the default operation, but you can also choose to transcode your media. Click the Browse button to choose a media destination. When creating a media-managed version of the project, I normally choose an external drive that I can disconnect and store away from my computer. I'll choose this SSD drive, create a new folder, and name it Nelson Teaser 2 Consolidated. Click Create, then Open. In order to consolidate the timeline to the smallest possible footprint, select Used Media and Trim Keeping Frame Handles. This option will trim all the master clips down to only those clip portions used in the timeline. So for example, if a clip in the timeline is 5 seconds long, but it references a clip in the media pool that's 30 seconds long, only the 5 seconds of the clip will be copied. Additionally, if you think you may need to trim the clips in the future or add transitions, you can use this input field to enter the number of frame handles you want added to the head and tail of each clip. By default, it's set to 24 frames, giving us extra media for adding transitions. There's one more option you need to be aware of. There's an option to relink to new files. Choosing this option will link the copied media in its new location to these timelines instead of using the existing media. At the bottom of the window is a graphic that shows the current size of the timeline media on the left and the new size of the timeline media on the right after the copy operation. The last step would be to click Start. However, I'm not going to do this because I don't want all my timelines pointing to the copied media. Assuming you did choose to do this, you could then locate the original media and delete it, thus freeing up hard drive space. So with that, it's time to end this tutorial. Congratulations! You now have a solid foundation for using Resolve to edit, color grade, mix, and deliver your next project. If you have any questions related to this training, please contact us using support@rippletraining.com. If you plan on taking the Resolve certification exam, you should have been sent a link to the exam once you've watched 80% of this tutorial. If you have questions about the exam, we created an FAQ on our website. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our other Resolve tutorials and the free ones on our blog. I'm Steve Martin, and thanks for watching.